Om Shri Sai Ram, offering my most humble and reverential pranams at the lotus feet of beloved Bhagwan, Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Yet again, a wonderful day and a blessed morning and evening for most of us to have this beautiful satsang, to think, to talk about the avataric journey of Sri Ram and Sathya Sai. So let us begin this morning with our prayer, and I request everybody to join me. O Lord, take my love and let it flow in fullness of devotion to Thee. O Lord, take my hands and let them work incessantly for Thee. O Lord, take my soul and let it be merged in one with Thee. O Lord, take my mind and thoughts and let them be in tune with Thee. O Lord, take my everything and let me be an instrument to work for Thee. Om Shri Sai Ram. So far, we have seen the advent of the Lord. We went through how Ram has acquired the formal education, what was his personality, what was his surrounding environment. And now we have seen an entry of a great personality into this equation. And many such personalities are surrounding Lord Ram's advent. But this personality holds his own unique position and place. Not only because what he achieved in his own life, but the role he played in the avataric journey. So today we are going to look at Avatar's life from the eyes of Brahma Rishi Vishwamitra. It is important and I think interesting to have a little glimpse of his life as to who was he and what was his lineage. As the story goes, there was a very noble personality called Kusha. He was supposed to be a mind child, what we say Manasputra of Lord Brahma. So in the beginning of the creation, Lord Brahma, when he was creating this whole cosmos and world and creation, mere will of Brahma was enough for manifestation. And Kusha was one such persona who was born of Brahma's mental will. Kusha had a son, Kushanabha. Now you can imagine these are highly evolved, pure, sattvikally dominated personalities. Kushabha had an elder son called Gadhi. And Gadhi's son was Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra's birth name was Kaushika. He became a very great and righteous king. So Kaushika was his actual name given by his parental lineage. So we can imagine at what timeline Vishwamitra or Kaushika was born, he was great grandson of Kusha, who was the Manas Putra of Brahma. So you can imagine the timeline where Vishwamitra enters into this cosmic play with the Lord's will. And then the story of Vishwamitra goes in a different way. He ruled for thousands of years, as they say. And one day he was maybe passing through a forest and he saw the hermitage of sage Vashisht. And he enters that, and they both have very good conversation. As a king, he was received as per the protocol. And sage tells him at the end of the conversation, you can stay here. And since you are here with your army and you are tired because you have been on a hunting expedition for a long time, so accept our invitation to have food. And that is where he sees the Kamadhenu's child and how she feeds everything, and by the divine will of that celestial cow, the whole army is fed in no time. They are all well taken care of. Vishwamitra, being a Kshatriya king, so to say, he develops a kind of desire. He likes her so much that he says, such a powerful and organized, divinely blessed cow should not be in a village or in a hermitage of a sage. It's underutilized, so to say. So he demands that such beauty should be in king's place. I hope my audio is fine, and if any objection to the audio, please let me know. Oh, sorry. Now can you hear? I hope you are now I'm audible. So he desires to get it by force. So he returns with his army and attacks the ashram. But with the divine powers of Vashisht, his army is annihilated and he could not defeat or he could not even disturb anything there. And that creates really a confusion in him that how come a mere rishi could be powerful than him, who is a Chakravarti Samrat, who is like an emperor, has an amazing army. Here it's very interesting to note that Kaushika was fighting with an external army, and Vashisht, a Brahma Rishi, a Rishi who had attained oneness with the Brahman, was using mantra Shakti. This mantra Shakti versus yantra Shakti, as Bhagavan would call it. Obviously, mantra has got more power. So, mantra, as we know, it is officiated through the sounds, and yantra is equipments, like you have machine, guns, and ammunitions, and all that. And he realizes that the mantra Shakti, which originates from within, the power of self, was far more powerful than what he had acquired all his life so far. And that prompts Vishwamitra, as Rajas was high, to do penance. So you can imagine a person can go into so called spiritual activities of penance and other things with a Rajas feeling of acquisition of a fruit in end. So even that spiritual activity becomes a Rajasic activity. It is no longer a sattvic experience. And he acquires and he succeeds to please the gods and acquire a lot of powers. In fact, he does a severe penance, they say, and he acquires the powers and some energies and weaponry which were almost impossible for any humans at that time to get. And he comes back equipped and starts firing at the ashram. And he actually succeeds in destroying the ashram, killing the sons of Vashishta. But he could not defeat Vashishta. They say Vashishta comes out with Brahmadanda. The literal translation of Brahmadanda is the stick. Danda is that stick, the mace of Brahma. And because of that, even Brahmastra, what you can say a nuclear bomb, also could not succeed. And that humiliation was again too much for him. And he realizes that unless I am equal to Vashisht in his spiritual status, I won't be able to defeat him. And Vishwamitra again goes off. He travels across to Himalayas and to the Far East and does very severe penance. And slowly he starts realizing self. The beauty of self-realization is that once you touch that, once you taste it, like Bhagavan would say, once you have tasted the nectar, you can never enjoy or never appreciate anything cheap. So the best wines, the best flavored juices would not make a difference once you have tasted the nectar. And this Kaushika reaches that level of oneness. He is in bliss by his realization. And the beauty of that state was that he even forgot why he was worshipping. He lost interest in the fruit. He lost interest in competing with sage. He lost idea about the whole competition of defeating somebody, acquiring something. All that made no sense at that time. And in that blissful state, Brahma comes, Indra comes, everybody arrives, all the gods to bless him. And it's that moment when Brahma declares that, hey Kaushika, you are now Brahma Rishi. And he, because he had developed such love and compassion in his heart, that he says, now you have become the friend of the world. and hence he names him Vishwamitra. And that is how the great emperor king Kaushika gets the name Vishwamitra. I thought this small little brief sketch of Vishwamitra's life was important for us to understand where he comes from and who was he, that persona who was the great grandson of Brahma himself. How that sage lived all through the yugas to wait for this blessed opportunity to play a role in the avataric mission. And certainly he got a very important and a very coveted role. He formally, as we will see as the story flows, he formally initiated Ram and Lakshman into so many knowledge-based areas. He gave them the science of weaponry, arts, and he was the conduit for Ram and Sita marriage. So let us keep this backdrop in mind as we proceed further. I'm sorry that my brother Ranganath Raju is not available today for some unavoidable reasons. So we will continue this journey today without him, and hopefully if he can, find time and feel better and come. So this is a backdrop of Vishwamitra. So when Ram and Vasishtha Gita, when we say Vasishtha Gita portion was happened, then everybody was kind of, elated by the response of the sage. And Vishwamitra had come for a purpose to the court. And that discussion again took force. And Dashrath, as we know, was very attached to his sons. And the mere thought that Vishwamitra would ask for Ram and Lakshman to be sent to fight the Rakshasas disturbed him immensely. He was totally shaken up. Bhagavan writes that he was devastated inside. And he falls at the feet of the Guru and he says, Master, what you are facing, it is unfortunately my mistake. Because in my protection, our rishis are not safe. So I should look after that. And he mentions that Ram is not even 16 yet. So you can imagine how young and youthful the children were. He says Ram has not even reached 16. He has not seen any war so far. He has not even faced any Rakshasas. Imagine what happens to him when a Rakshasa comes in front of him, because they could take forms, as we have seen Rakshasas' abilities. They were highly intelligent and acquired, powerful people. And they had the abilities, they had learned the art of transformation. They could change into any form and shape. And they would usually take a very horrific forms, and that would scare people. And he said, how will my little Rama face those demons? Those who look ferocious, they fight, and they have no code of fighting for that matter. Because they don't fight with law, they don't have any code of conduct. They can fight anytime, in any manner, and they are too deceptive. And he was kind of afraid for Ram. And he pleads in many ways. In fact, he offers himself. He said, I am the king. I am responsible for it. I will come. I'll come with my full army to protect you. And see to it that not only your yajna, everything is safe. But Vishwamitra is very tough and firm on his resolve. He said, Dashrath, you asked for it. You have given your word to me. Because in the excitement I think this was just one of the faults, if I may unfortunately use the word, that Dashrath did not think always before giving his words. That Raghukula's clans, that pride was there in Dashrath, that he would always say, ask what you want. And that's what he did to even Kekai, and that's how he did it to Vishwamitra. And this is actually before Kekai, this is the first time we see that the nature of Dashrath, that he would give pledges or he will give his word without contemplating on the consequence of it. So when he receives Vishwamitra, that time only he says, now you have come, accept my pranams, and he does all the formalities of a good host. And then he says, how can I serve you, master? Ask. And Vishwamitra, in fact, very diplomatically tells him that yes, I have come with a hope, and I hope you can fulfill my desire. And Dashrath responds back that, O Rishi, such language you should not use here in the court of Raghus. That language you can preserve for others, but here your word will be our command, and your desire will be fulfilled. So he already gives him that kind of, assurance. And Vishwamitra is pleased, and he says, I expected such language from a king of Ikshwaku lineage, of Raghuvanshis. And now when he tells that I need Ram and Lakshman to come along with me for the protection of my yajna, which I have willed, Dashrath loses his calm, and he begs and prays that please reconsider your request. When this discussion is heated up, Vasisht feels that now he needs to enter. And he comes, he intervenes, and he starts to explain to Dashrath who Vishwamitra is. He says, Dashrath, nobody can know and understand Vishwamitra as I do. And I can tell you one thing, leave all your fears, leave all your worries, and let the princes go. Because they will only get benefited in the company and association of this great Rishi. And never underestimate Vishwamitra. He is so well equipped that he himself can destroy all the demons, all the Rakshasas. But if he has come to ask for Ram, it is for Ram's benefit. So do not interfere in the destiny. When Vasisht was so firm in his communication, Dasharatha feels lost. He feels like, I lost the battle. And then he sends for his wives, the mothers. See how much attempt is made by Dashrath to change the wish of the Rishi. And then mothers come in. Kaushalya hears the argument and she's heartbroken, obviously. All the mothers are shocked. And Kaushalya very sweetly presents her case. She says, first of all, I don't see this logic in your request. How can a Rishi of this caliber have a problem? Point number one. And how can any negativity come even close to him? And then how can he come to ask for a child to help? All these don't make sense to me. This is on one hand a failure of the king, to provide security. On another hand, you see a rishi in whose presence these demons and negativity can't even stand. And he comes to ask for a help from a child. I fail to understand. And Dasharatha tries to jump in and say, yes, yes, I would agree that it is my fault and I should go with army. So this kind of discussion continues. Sometimes to an extent that Vishwamitra says, okay, Dasharath, you seem to have lost your senses. You seem to have forgotten your lineage. You have forgotten your status. That you are even willing to give up the prestige and the name of your family and clan. So keep happy with your children and family, and I would leave as unfulfilled person. And that was a devastating statement. And this, and Vashishth again interferes, and then he says no. And a beautiful thing happens, another Bhagavan mentions it so sweetly, that when Vishwamitra calls for Ram, all the brothers come in. It seems Vishwamitra blesses Ram from the external eyes. He pats his head and very sweetly asks, Ram, would you mind coming with me to protect my yajna? And Ram gives him a very assuring smile, and he's very eager. And when he hears the arguments from his father and mother, he counters back and he says, Father, how can you not have confidence in your own upbringing? You haven't brought up us as a sheep. We are lion cubs. How can you even think that anybody can defeat us or any fear can enter into us? And how can you even go back on your words? We are Kshatriyas. This is our dharma. And if I do not follow it, I have no right to be here. Ram's arguments were full of dharmic wisdom. His outlook was dharmic. He represented dharma. Hearing his beautiful words, everybody was calm. Vishwamitra was delighted. He was the first person, Vishwamitra, who announced publicly that Ram was divine. But there is a beautiful journey of Vishwamitra too that we will look at. How he also gets trapped into the Maya Shakti of the Lord. So with this arguments, ultimately Vashishth takes the lead and he commands Ram, Ram, if you are ready, take the blessings and proceed. Here is another thing which I noticed in Bhagavan's narration, which is very interesting and very beautiful to know. The protocol, what follows. When Ram comes to the court and the king, his father, is sitting, he comes and bows down to him first. Then he bows down to Vashishth, who is his guru. And then he bows down to Vishwamitra. It's a very beautiful sequence when you watch to understand how why would Bhagavan point out this also? That when Ram comes, he bows down first to the king. See, the protocol of the court was followed. And you will see as we move forward how such protocols are always maintained. How everybody is so conscious and aware of dharma that they don't even deviate, even in small areas. So when Vashishth says, Ram, if you are ready, leave. And Vishwamitra had already asked for Ram and Lakshman. So both the brothers very happily rise. They pick up their bows and arrows. And Vishwamitra gets up first. And Bhagavan says, he gets up and walks out. And Ram and Lakshman follow him. So look at that protocol, that when the conversation is done, they have accepted Vishwamitra as their guru now, whom they have to follow. And Dashrath's final words to Ram and Lakshman were, you are going with this Maharishi Vishwamitra, obey him, follow him as he says, do as he says, and bring glory to our clan. Make him happy and return victorious. And Ram obediently bows, Ram and Lakshman, and they walk behind the Rishi. With them, all the ministers and the senior members of the council also walk. And Bhagavan does not fail to mention that the brothers walk barefoot behind the Rishi. Now imagine, prince, they are princes of the greatest empire of that time. And a Rishi comes to ask for them. Another beautiful insight. Why did he come? And as we have seen before, the ashrams were outside the territory of what they say state. And yet, because Dashrath was an emperor, he had the responsibility to take care. So when Vishwamitra comes to ask for assistance, he had to respond. And when he asked for children, they walked behind him. But the beauty of it is that they were not going on an official chariot or any official royal protocol. As the Rishi demanded, they followed the Rishi. Rishi was walking, they walked barefoot behind him. Up to the city gate, everybody followed them. And from the city gate, as per the protocol, as they say, the commands of the royal commands, everybody stopped at the city entrance. After which, Vishwamitra and Ram and Lakshman continued their journey. Very interestingly, as soon as they enter the forest area, Vishwamitra tells Ram and Lakshman, children, prepare yourself, get ready, and be alert. So they mention that they have some hand gloves, leather gloves and arm thing, which will help them to fight and shoot the arrows. So they wear those arm gloves and pick up their bow and arrows and get alerted. They carry the bow on your shoulder, but when he says get ready, so they will pick it up in their hands and start the journey further. So this is how they enter into the forest. They're very alert, obviously following. So I'm not taking you through the whole storyline, but then at night, Vishwamitra says, now we'll rest. They would sleep. It was a forest lifestyle near the river. And Vishwamitra gives them a command that tomorrow early morning when you wake up, take bath, get ready, and I'm going to give you something. And that is where it's a very beautiful description. Vishwamitra says, as you are going on this journey, I'll give you two powerful mantras and vidyas. You can call them Shaktis, the power. For that, get ready. So they go do the ablutions, do prayers in the morning, take bath, and come back ready. And there, Vishwamitra hands them two powers, Bala and Atibala. And he also gives them other layers, but here it is Bala and Atibala. The important aspect of this, which Bhagavan had explained, that Bala and Atibala are different combinations of Gayatri Mantra. And as we all know, sage Vishwamitra was the one who received Gayatri. So the world is ever grateful to this Maharishi, Brahmarishi, who gave us this amazing secret code of Gayatri Mantra. Om Bhurbhuvassuvaha Tatsavito Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The Gayatri is, we are getting into the Gayatri here, but Gayatri is if I may simplify it, it is a coded secret of creation. It is a powerful mantra, a weapon, an energy which resonates with the frequency of the creative powers. So it is the most powerful, most effective. On a simple way, it illuminates our mind, intellect, so to say, and allows us, facilitates us to merge with the oneness, with the Supreme. And on an external basis, it is amazingly powerful weapon. Bhagavan, it seems, had explained that Bala and Atibala, it is a permutation combination of Gayatri. On accomplishing those mantras, you can conquer sleep and hunger. Now, can you imagine a person who has got full control on food? Our 99% time of our life, we are worried only about our stomach, the food part of it. And Bala and Atibala are the powers. On acquiring them, you are able to conquer anger and sleep. So these are the two powers given to them. And of course, as the journey continues, Vishwamitra gives them many other weaponaries which are very rare, which people can't even imagine. So it is a very interesting style, how he's handing over. But let me tell you another insight into Bhagavan, how he narrates it. He says, imagine the whole time Vishwamitra has been telling everybody, even his father, he scolded Dasharath that, hey, you are behaving weakling, you don't understand, he's not your son, he's a divine incarnate, and all that. And he's so happy that his life's purpose is getting fulfilled today, and that he has got the avatar with him. But when he comes, the first thing he feels that let me give them these two mantras so that they are equipped better for the forest life. And Ram obediently follows it. Ram does not blink. He follows the instructions to the T. And Bhagavan uses Lakshman, a character, to highlight this aspect of Maya. That Lakshman looks at the whole scenario as a third person, and he's enjoying that the same brother whom this rishi announced to be the god is asking to go clean up yourself, get ready. I will give you mantra which will help you to conquer food and sleep and prepare you for the forest life. But Lakshman does not say, and Bhagavan very sweetly says, Lakshman smiles and obeys, following his brother. I find when you read Bhagavan's Ramayana, you not only get the story, but you get the behind the scene, the essence of the story. That's probably why Bhagavan called it Atma Ramayana. It's a story of the self journey. That how we keep falling, keep slipping into the Maya. And imagine we are talking about a Brahma Rishi Vishwamitra, and not an ordinary person like you and me. A Brahma Rishi slipping so easily into the trap. But he comes off also immediately. And then he says that, okay, Lord, I'm doing a formality. I'm reminded that same thing, similar station from Nandi in Shiv Puran, they say. Ravan is looking for a place to build a palace for Shiva on Kailash. And he says, and Bhagavan Shiv sends Nandi to show him Kailash and say, guide him, give him a tour of Kailash so that he can find what he wants. And Nandi asks him, what are you looking for? He says, I'm looking for the most auspicious place and suitable place according to the Vastu Shastra where I can build a palace for my Lord Shiva. And Nandi starts laughing. Now imagine Ravan, a knowledgeable giant who had controlled 64 kalas of knowledge, in conversation with a bull who says Manda Buddhi, which got a low intellect, and he starts laughing at Ravan and saying, hey Ravan, I thought you're an intelligent person, but you talk like an ignorant person. Ravan, enraged, asked him, why? How dare you say like that to me? He says, Ravan, you believe Shiva to be your guru, you believe him to be the god of gods. Don't you even have this much of sense that he is the personification, embodiment of auspiciousness and purity? He lives here. This Kailash is his residence. So how can impurity or inauspiciousness even enter Kailash? You can choose any place that would be auspicious because it is Shiva's land. See how the trickery of the mind and the Maya plays. That even if you are aware, so sometimes we think we know. We can give discourses on the topic that we think we are aware of. But when it comes to delivery, when it comes to practice, somehow we fail. Somehow we lose the sense. And it's so funny that we don't even realize that what we are doing. So here we see that Vishwamitra also, in spite of everything, slips there and he says, go and clean yourself, purify, because now I have to give you these mantras, so you must follow the protocol. And Ram being Ram, a perfect student, he does that. And the result is they are initiated into Bala and Ati Bala. And then Ram, he also gives them some more powers and Shakti. And then he says, rest I will give you when you reach the ashram. Here I would like to discuss about these powers which Bhagavan has been explaining to us in many places. But I thought it would be interesting for us to look at these areas. These, Bhagavan puts it as Mantra Shakti, Yantra Shakti, Tantra Shakti, and Maya Shakti. The power of mantra, the power of machines, which is yantra, the power of tantra, the occultism, and the power of maya. I don't want to translate maya into any English word. Maya is maya. It is not illusion, it is not delusion, it is much far beyond. It is the power of God Himself. It is a power by which this duality appears as dual. This creation appears as dual. This singularity appears as creation. So it is not delusion. It is just Maya. The beauty of being in duality is also Maya. And beauty of coming back is also Maya. So whatever he does is amazing. So let us look at these four little bit. I remember I got introduced to this concept in MBA discourses when Bhagwan in mid 80s, 86 around, when he started MBA, he used to come and teach, literally teach MBA every weekend. Only commerce students and MBA students were allowed, and it was a audiovisual room of college that time. And Bhagwan would sweetly come after the bhajans, and almost for 2 hours he would start management courses. And that's how he gave us man management. In such environment, once Bhagwan had, as I have been telling that, Bhagwan has a very uncanny way of bringing the Atman concept into the everything. So there's nothing outside Atman for Bhagwan, and that is what he expects us also to develop, that kind of vision, that kind of outlook in life, that we see everything as the reflection of Atman. So Bhagwan was talking about powers, ability of mind and all that. And there he says about the technological development. And he said, you all see this Mantra Shakti, and you are surprised when you hear and read that Hanuman could fly, and Ravan did this, and Rama did this, and Krishna lifted them up. So we all see all of these as a mystical, and we tend to define them as indicative messages, and we never even can comprehend that these are possible. How can a Vanara pick up a mountain and fly at the speed of 750 miles? It is kind of a mind-boggling truth if you accept it. But we have a tendency of looking at life from our narrow prism of the present environment. With the present environment where we have not even studied well, where we have not even engaged ourselves into any such sadhanas, any such practices, and we have the ego and our limitation to forecast, to see that era, or comprehend those giants who had spent lifetime in acquisition of this knowledge and practicing these things. So he was talking about Mantra Shakti, and he said, boys, look. And in that discourses, those sessions, interactiveness, it was amazing. Bhagwan talked about the power of mantra, and he did like that, and he said, see, if I will that I would like to have an idol of Sai Baba, which should have this color combination, which should have some gems like that. He did like that, and literally no movement, an idol popped up in his hand. And then he gave it to us, and it was, moved around. Everybody saw it. Some people even took pictures at that time. We didn't have smartphones in those that time, so it was a very rare occasion. Not everybody could, engage in that. But yes, we saw it. Then Bhagavan said, when it came back, he continued his discourse, and when it came back, he said, look, now if I again will, that it should change completely. The posture, the dress, the, the gems, the design of this idol should change. It will. And it is foo, foo, foo 3 times, and the whole idol changed. Right in front of us. There was no movement. He didn't do any waving of hand. Nothing. He just said, I will it, and it happened. And he again gave it back, and it went round again. So 2, 3 times it did, and then it disappeared. And like that, he has done many things in that session. And there he explained Mantra Shakti and Tantra Shakti, Yantra Shakti. And he says, boys, Yantra Shakti is what you see. Now he gave a very beautiful analogy at that day. He said, when the scriptures tell you that Krishna was with so many gopikas at the same time, a little baby Krishna dancing with Ras, dancing with all the gopikas at the same time, you can ignorantly brush it up and say that, hey, it was imagination, or it was their perception of Krishna. He says, what about today? There is a football match in Europe, and each one of you see that in your own bedrooms. If a prime minister is speaking in Delhi, the whole world can watch at the same time in their own bedrooms. How is this possible? He says, that is Yantra Shakti, the power of machine. The machine has enabled you to experience whatever is happening at the same time in your own proximity. But Mantra Shakti is more refined. In Yantra Shakti, the power of machine, you cannot interact with him. Even today we see AI, artificial intelligence, where you can teleport person imagery, and today people are giving talks on that. It's fantastic. You can recreate an old scene into an AI machine and, beam it across the world. And people would see a person figure coming up and they can interact. But you cannot go and hug that person. You cannot go and shake hands. You cannot talk. You cannot touch that feel. That is not possible yet. So Bhagavan in 80s said that yes, development in technology is high, but we are still far from the fineness and the magnanimity, the magnanimous power of Mantra Shakti. Mantra is very refined. There a rishi can manifest, one who has acquired the Mantra Shakti. He doesn't need to beam himself artificially, where you cannot touch him, where you cannot interact personally, only you can talk to each other, and that also require machinery. No. Here a rishi can just manifest himself in flesh and blood and talk to you. They can teleport you, they can travel. That is Mantra Shakti, the power of mind, the power of mantra. So that was Mantra Shakti, then Yantra Shakti of machines that we are now seeing, and then Tantra Shakti. Tantra is actually a coded, it is actually a mixture, you can say, in which you control some fine energies of the consciousness life. Unfortunately, it is kind of a faster track they take, but that does not allow the recipient to be prepared for that jump. See, when you work hard for something, the struggle prepares you for the next level. But when things are bestowed on you just like that, without your effort, you lose the value of it. You don't understand how to keep it. There are a lot of proverbs to explain this part that you must deserve it. So when you prepare somebody, like somebody who has got no money, suddenly gets a windfall gain. And we have heard many stories, and you can see that they lose all their wealth. Some people was unknown, talented person, suddenly he gets fame and it gets into his head and he drops. So Tantra Shakti is like that. By mere small activity, because you have learned the art, you have found out the loophole to acquire something, but you are not evolved of that stature to hold it, then that is why Tantra Shakti becomes little dangerous, and it is not recommended in Kali Yuga phase, where people are mostly sensual oriented and gratification is the peak. Here everything is done for sensual gratification. And because of this time, because of this nature of the time, our gurus, our Bhagwan recommends Tantra Shakti avoiding. Don't engage yourself into it because you are not ready for it. For Tantra, you require a strong master who can rein you and control you. So, like people like Brahmarishis, they are able to handle Tantra because they have control over everything and they can handle it. But ordinary person, when they do little havan, they catch a spirit somewhere and they get powers. It is difficult to hold and comprehend, and they start losing their ways. So that is Tantra Shakti. Finally, Maya Shakti. Well, as we were talking about it, it is the divine power. I would say Maya is no different than God Himself. Because Shiva and Shakti can't be separated. The God and his reflection cannot be separated. A dance and a dancer cannot be separated. They are one. So Maya Shakti is that supreme power of the God, because of which this creation happened. Because of this, we think what we think. Because of this, this journey becomes more adventurous and interesting and difficult most of the time. So these are the powers when he talks about. Now imagine Vishwamitra had acquired all of these powers. Maya Shakti he could not handle, and it keeps overpowering him. Whereas Vashisht, on the other hand, was more evolved from that persona. But when they are meeting here at this point of time, they both are Brahmarishis. They both are realized souls. But look how even Maya can play with them too. They also get carried away and they start wondering about how to take care of Ram. Will Ram be able to handle that? Is it right? See, all these thoughts also come to a Brahmarishi. So who are we? Again, a reminder of humility. A beautiful thing. So Mantra Shakti, Yantra Shakti, these two could have been said that Vishwamitra gave to Ram. Now we will see in the future also how he is actually, imparting these knowledges. And Bhagavan also explains very beautifully that I'll share a few of them, how these powers, they say that Shaktis bow down to Ram. It's a very beautiful connotation. I am myself failing to comprehend, but I'm just sharing with you the words of the Lord, so we all can make our own judgments. He says when Vishwamitra gave the powers, the Shaktis, they mentioned the Shaktis to Ram. These Shaktis manifest in front of him and bow down to Ram for accepting them. And they humbly said, "We'll be at your beck and call. So whenever you desire, whenever you want us, we'll be happy to come and serve." And if you look at it from a realistic, practical approach, they say, the scriptures mention that these powers are controlled by the will of the controller, the person who is wielding them. So, like if Ram has these powers, he has mastered those mantras, those initiating, like how to, how to use a weapon, say a tank. One has to know, get certified. So once you are certified and you have the keys and all the codes, then you can sit in the machine and shoot, right? Similarly, you have in Mantra Shakti also in weaponry, you have to have certain credentials, certain qualifications to acquire them. And once you acquire them, then it seems only by the will of the person who holds them, they appear, they execute, and they return back also. So only that person who has the authority on these weaponry can not only shoot but can reverse them back. See, today we can't even comprehend that. Can you imagine you fire a shot and before it reaches the thing you can pull it back? Not possible. You shoot a bomb from an aircraft, but can you pull it back? You cannot. So that thought, that technology is yet not being explored by our present science. But in that era, they write, and very clearly Bhagavan also mentions that all these energies, all these powers, Shaktis, they were at the call and the will of the doer. So the person who held them, the person who shot them, also had the power to regain them. So you can shoot a Brahmastra and pull it back too. Can you imagine? And this technology, this ability was even shown in Mahabharata time. When Arjun shoots Brahmastra and Ashwatthama shoots Brahmastra, Vishwamitra stops, Vasishtha, I think, Vasishtha stops the Brahmastra in the middle. He commands them to take it back because otherwise the whole world will be destroyed. Arjun humbly reverts it back. But Ashwatthama says, I didn't practice that much and I only knew how to shoot but not to retrieve. And for that, Ashwatthama gets again punished. And Vasishtha helps to divert that missile. And then we know it was Abhimanyu's son, Parikshit, who was impacted and reborn by the grace of Krishna. So that's how the story goes. But the fact is, this energy, this power, that we have still not reached that level of technological advancement. You can say that you can shoot and retrieve. So that all these energies were playing in that part. So this is how the journey of this princess continued, and they reached the confluence of Ganga and Saryu. So Saryu, as we know, it comes from Ayodhya and Ganga is flowing from Himalayas. So the mergence, that place they reach. Now it's very important to see how Bhagavan takes us through the journey of Ram, that they are hardly 2 days walking distance. And today also, if you map Ayodhya to the confluence of Ganga and Saryu, you can see the distances and you can see the walking track of Ram, how they have walked in this journey. And it is a very interesting thing. I would encourage all of you to just Google map it and look at the maps, and you'll see the beautiful track, like how they walked and how much they have covered in 2 days walking. And they reach this confluence of Ganga and Saryu. All these confluence areas where these 2 rivers or 3 rivers meet and merge, they have amazing spiritual significance. We can look at those later, but just to know as a thumb rule, They are all very, very important places for spiritual aspirants. So you will always find at the confluencing area there is something interesting, something spiritual, and something mind boggling. So, in this place where Ganga and Saryu meet, there is one ashram called Shiva Ashram, which is also called Kamashram. Kamashram is also popularly known as Shiva Ashram. Now, all of us know the story of Kamadev, how Lord Shiva burns him with his third eye, the fire of third eye. So that is the spot where that whole story happens. But just to give it a brief, presentation on that, and they say that Uma was worshipping, and Devtas. That's how they explain that Devtas wanted to get Shiva thinking about Mother Uma, so that he could consent and bless her with her desire of marrying him. And in that way, Kamadev accepts the responsibility of creating impulses in Shiva. And that is a spot where he tries to disturb Shiva's meditation. And in that process, he gets turned into ash. Because when they say third eye of Shiva, imagine, that's what is beautiful to understand. It's unfortunate that we interpret it as the Shiva's anger. The third eye is the angry eye of Shiva. Why don't we look at it as Sudrishti of Shiva? That when the whole power of negativity comes together as Kama Shakti to disturb Shiva, the supreme stillness, the supreme purity, the supreme auspiciousness, it tickles him and he gets a little wave. Valmiki explains it, and even many poets have explained it beautifully. They say it is like a still ocean, and you throw a drop, a pebble. It creates a small ripple, right? Imagine a still ocean. Imagine ocean to be very still, no movement at all. And then you throw a pebble in it. You get some ripples, right? So they explain it like the full power of karma, whole energy accumulated and trying to disturb Shiva created that kind of ripple in his consciousness. And out of mercy, the Lord Shiva looks at him. It's like you look at a child and say, "What is wrong with you?" So, it's a merciful eye. Shiva looks at him. And obviously, what will happen when a mercy looks at you is your redemption. So, Kamadev is redeemed. Imagine, but we feel that, hey, without Kama, without that ability of gratification, this world cycle would not work. And that is why we look at it in a negative way. And that is the reason why people prayed that, hey Lord, you burned the calm itself. The source, the initiating source you killed. But actually he didn't kill. He looked at it, and obviously in front of auspiciousness, how can even a ripple exist? So the auspicious third eye of Shiva opened and converted all the possible disturbing elements into ash, which for the creation is also required. Because we are running with three gunas, the whole creation is three gunas. So if one guna itself is deleted, obviously the Srishti can't sustain. And hence the prayer for Kamadenu, Kama to be revived. And he comes back and all that, that's a different story. But unfortunately we consider these things as negative. But I would only request all of us to read Purans, to read the story of avatars and the gods not from a human perspective, but let us attempt to explore these lives with humility, to see that an auspiciousness can never give inauspiciousness. It's impossible. I cannot imagine Shiva being angry. The creation is over. A small thought in Shiva created this. Like somebody said, Swami, your will that hospitals have come up within a year and these water projects have happened so fast and blah blah blah. Swami said, Buddha, no, my will is too much. It is only my wish that these things happened. I only willed once and creation happened. See, only God can talk like that, that I willed once and the creation happened. So this is the power of, when you are looking at these stories, when you are interacting, my only humble request is that look at it like this, that auspiciousness can never be associated with inauspiciousness. So the third eye depiction, in my humble opinion, is the benevolent eye, the benevolent drishti of Lord, which fell on Kama, and the Kama was off. Obviously, because Kama came to Lord with wrong intent. And if your intent is not pure, you cannot stand in front of the Master. And all of us who have had the blessed opportunity to interact with Bhagavan can vouch for it. That whatever we do, but if we come in front of Him with openness, with sincerity, with humility, He would forgive and accept. So this is the beauty of looking at. So this was the Shiva ashram, which was auspicious because Shiva meditated there. So they stayed there. They spent a night there, and ashramites were delighted, excited to receive the great Rishi Vishwamitra with these shining, effulgent princes, Ram and Lakshman. And at night, Vishwamitra told them a lot of stories. He engaged with the ashramites and they rested there. There is another side story of river Saryu. And Bhagavan very beautifully throws it in. I think it's all interesting because these are the flavors which Swami has given us, and it will be, it's interesting to learn. The origin of Saryu. So, origin of Saryu, I don't know how many of you have read it, and it comes from Manasarovar. Manasarovar, as we know, it is in Himalayas, near Kailash. And Manasarovar is the mental, when it was built, Mana Sarovar. It is a pond, a lake of mind. It is still, pure. In that altitude, it is fresh and clean. People who have gone and seen, they would have enjoyed it. That Manasarovar, see, that is why everything what is physically available has a subtle aspect, has an aspect which we have to consider, that life is in subtle world which gets manifested in the physical world. So Manasarovar is physically in Kailash. Manasarovar, it seems for some reason, had overflown. And that overflow turned into that there is Sarovar. When it flowed, that river which flowed, that Sarovar was became Saryu river. So it says that Saryu river's origin is that Manasarovar lake. The overflowing Saryu, the Sarovar, became Saryu river. So it is again created by Brahma. It is a highly pure, auspicious river. And the confluence of Ganga, the most revered river and pure, auspicious river of ours. So this is the confluence where Shiva found that auspicious place to sit in his meditation. So that was one of the resting place of Shiva. So this ashram, they spent a night and they moved forward. I hope you are enjoying this session, and since I'm alone today, so I can continue telling you stories, but in case you have any thoughts or questions, you are welcome to present it and write it here. And I am trying to give a flavor of how Bhagwan has presented these stories, and this is the interesting part of the Swami's style of mentioning, and this is where I enjoy sharing these thoughts with everybody, how he narrates the stories and gives us insight into various elements of Ramayana, which normally we would have missed, thinking that it is a small element and we are more focused on the main storyline. But these flavors, I feel, add to the whole charm of when we look at the whole story about Ramayana. So now they move again in forest, and now they're entering into a very thick zone of forest. It's getting denser and denser day by day. And Ram has another beautiful characteristic, which I think it is applicable for all the students. Ram, whenever he goes anywhere on his travels or whenever he's traveling with anybody, he asks a lot of questions. This shows the inquisitiveness which Ram is representing, that a student must have. So when you are traveling and you see something you want to learn and you remember it, so you find Ram every time, even when he went for a study tour with minister after his education, there also he kept asking him, as we have seen. Here also Ram keeps asking Vishwamitra, please tell me the story of this place. What is Shiva Ashram? When it happened? So in that process, we are able to learn so much because Ram is asking question and Vishwamitra is telling. And we learn so beautiful things about the place, the significance of it. So I think it is also like Ram, we say, is Purushottam, the perfection in everything. He's perfect as a student also. So he comes to this dense forest and inquisitively again he asks, what is this? And Vishwamitra tells him the story. And they reach a place. It used to be, there were two kingdoms, he explains. The kingdom were Malad and Kurusha. They reached the city of Malad and Kurusha. We ask, what is this city? And the story goes, once Indra killed Vritrasur, a high caste, and because of that, he had to suffer a consequence of it. And the consequence was that because he was hiding and he had to sit in one place, he had a lot of hunger, insatiable pain of hunger. And later on, he was brought by sages who helped him to clean up, give bath in Ganga. And he does a lot of penance, he does chanting and all that. And ultimately, he washes away his sins. And Brahma was happy that he has cleaned himself, he has purified himself. And that process of purification, in which his dirt, or his, in Sanskrit they say mala, that mal was removed. So that is the place. And the karosha is hunger. The cry, when you cry, when a child cries for food, that is called karosha. So where his mala was removed and he was crying for food, hence the kingdoms were called Malada and Karosha. In that lived an ogress called Tataki. Now Tataki, as we know, was the very demoness ogress, or you can say very dreadful ogress. She had a son Maricha, but let us look at the story of Tataki first. And it is that first demon that, or Rakshasi, that Ram faces. And it's interesting that Ram is first time going on an official war with demons, and that demon had happened to be a female. So you can see that the Dharam Sankat, as we call it, the confusion of dharma. So first time you are going for a fight, and that fight is with a female. Even though she is a ogress, she could demon, but she's a female. And the code of warfare is little, I would say, not clear, ambiguous about should we or should we not. And Ram does question that, and that's interesting. But let us look at the story of Tataki first. There was a yaksha. Actually, Tataki was not an ogress all the time, and that is the part which I think we all need to understand and look at. She was a yakshini actually. Yakshas are another beings, if I may say, who are bit evolved, whose sattva is higher than normal. And this is the story to understand. She was a yakshini. So she had that, she was born of a rishi. And there was this one, yaksha, there was a yaksha who was called Suketu. That was the father of Tataki. He was a great person who did a lot of penance, and he pleased Lord Brahma. And Brahma, because he was childless, so he did a penance for a child. And Brahma was pleased with him. And he didn't have any gender bias, so to say. And Brahma gave him a beautiful daughter, was blessed. That daughter, because of the boon she was born, she was absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, but also mighty powerful. And probably she was so pampered because she was born after a long time and only child. So she didn't live in a disciplined lifestyle which she ought to have. And being a female, she got more pampered that way, but because of the so much power she was born with, she could not contain it, and she would move recklessly. She was like as if there was no bar and no barriers for her. As she grew up into a beautiful lady, the father, as normally the fathers would think, they thought that once she gets settled in marriage, things would be different for her, and they get her married to a person called Sundar, another yaksha. But Sundar was unfortunately little with negative traits. He found joy in troubling rishis. He found some uncanny happiness when people were crying. And this Sunda and Tataki gave birth to a son called Marich. So that's how the Marich also comes into picture. Sunda had a habit, as I was telling you, he was very, he loved to torture and trouble people, destroy yajnas. One day in his pranks, he goes and disturbs Rishi Agastya's Havan. Now, ashram of Agastya is very auspicious. They are all doing whatever they are doing. And Sunda is like Sunda as a nature. He goes and destroys and disturbs the ashram of sage Agastya and his penance. And in that, Agastya curses him. He says, "You are behaving like a demon, so become a demon." So a yaksha turns into an ogre. That enrages Tataki because Agastya curses him and ultimately kills him also. So Sunda is dead and Tataki is enraged. And along with her son Marich, she goes and attacks Agastya and destroys the ashram. She tries to do. Now Agastya looks at them, he's kind of helpless, You can see the saint. Now that's why I said it's a very beautiful thing to understand when Bhagavan explains that as a rishi, you have certain self-imposed restrictions and boundaries. You cannot be cursing or you cannot be losing your temper because then you lose your status, your power and everything. So Agastya is kind of finds no point in arguing or explaining to Tataki because he realizes she has developed that nature. And ultimately what she does is he relocates, he leaves. And he leaves that place and goes off. Tataki becomes very enraged and to such an extent because Agastya had cursed them also to become ogres. So in that converted form of ogress and the anger of losing her husband and anger of a fight against these rishis, she turns too violent and aggressive. She even turns into cannibalism. She becomes a cannibal. And in that in that anger, she destroys these two beautiful kingdoms and reduces them to this horrific forest. And this is what Ram asks. But here, the interesting thing about Ram was, which Vishwamitra acknowledges, and I would like to point this out, is that when Ram looks at the forest, it is dense, it is deep, it is looking very fearsome. Ram says to Vishwamitra that, "O Guru, when I look at this dreadful forest, it has got no life in it. But it appears to me that at some point of time in the past, this should have been a very flourishing area. Please tell me the truth about this place." And that is how Vishwamitra starts this story. There Bhagavan is mentioning one beautiful thing which I would like to highlight. Bhagavan says that Vishwamitra says to Ram that, "Ram, I'm so happy to see your keen eyesight, your keen vision to evaluate this. From the ruins you could make out that there was something beautiful. In the forest also you could make out. And Bhagavan has spun it that look at the Maya, that the same Vishwamitra again fell in trap when the question was asked by Ram. Instead of just doing his duty of narration, he gets a thought that wow, Ram is indeed special and he has a keen sense of observation. Now again he puts it in that flavor that look, again he fell trapped to the Maya Shakti of Ram. So now, after the story, Vishwamitra says, be ready, Ram. She can attack any time. And you have to be ready to fight. And if needed, kill her. The first thing Ram questions, see, this is how a person who is steeped into Dharma, a person who is established in Dharma, will always evaluate, will always look at life only through dharmic eyes. And Ram, being a student at this time, he is also showing us how a student of Dharma must always look at every scenario with that evaluation, with that eyes, and keep validating that if this action is dharmic or not. So as soon as when he hears this story and he hears the command of the Guru, he says, he questions that, oh Master, won't killing a woman be a sin? I understand she is an ogress, I understand she is cannibal, I understand she is violent, but is killing a woman necessary? And will not that incur sin? How do I proceed, O Master? Explain. And Vishwamitra acknowledges Ram. He says, very well, you have asked the right question at the right time, in the right manner, if I may add. He says, yes, you are absolutely right. Under the normal circumstances, women should be treated with grace, respect, and honor. But when there is a conflict with dharma, when the question is of dharma, then dharma precedes everything. Everything else is immaterial. To kill her, you are not killing a lady, you are not killing a woman. You are safeguarding dharma. Does it not resonate the same with Krishna telling Arjuna? It is in every yuga, the whole conflict is when we start misrepresenting or wrongly interpreting dharma, that all the confusion starts happening. So here Vishwamitra is putting that. And when he does this, he explains it in very much detail. I would suggest all of you must read Ram Katha, Rasvahini of Bhagavan. And he explains it with elaboration that why dharma has to be preceded. And for dharma to be preserved, nothing else matters, and how you have to preserve it and go forward. He explains that vision that I am not asking you to fight a woman, a lady. I am not asking you to kill a lady. So lady is not existent here. We are preserving dharma. And for dharma, we are destroying evil, which has come in the form of progress. That's all. So all this explanation happens, and then Bhagavan very beautifully uses Ram to put that whole discussion to rest. And Ram says, Master, forgive me. I did not ask this question to doubt, as a doubt to you, or with an intent to counter you. I wanted the world to know your viewpoint, how a sage, how a rishi thinks, why they allow certain actions and why they don't allow certain actions. The world must appreciate. Otherwise, for me, your command is enough. You said kill, I will. As a Kshatriya, that is my dharma. My father has commanded me to obey you. I shall, and I trust you. So you can imagine the drama going from both sides. So Bhagwan can sometimes ask a question not because he does not know the answers. Bhagwan can ask a question not because he is testing us, but he wants the world to know that you know, or probably he wants you to know that you know. Or if you don't know, then he can correct you. So Bhagwan's style of questioning should not be taken as a human interaction, that somebody is asking to test or somebody is asking for learning. There is neither test in Bhagwan nor learning in Bhagwan. Because he knows you. So he knows us. He knows us better than ourselves. So why should he test? So there is no testing required for him, for his sake. If we say that he tests, that is also for us to know our status. If we have to appear for a test, it is not for the teacher to know how much we know. It is for us to know how much we know and how qualified are we to go into the next class. So all the exams given to us in our life, even if we say that God has given us tests, it is not for God's sake that we take the test. It is for our own sake, our own learning, that we have to take tests. So when Ram presented this question and Vishwamitra explains it, Ram immediately puts that argument to rest, that this question was not asked to test you, O Master. Neither was he asked because I doubt you, or I did not want to kill, or I did not want to engage in this activity. But he wanted the world to understand a sage's perspective to life, sage's perspective to action. And Ram also, in a way, shows us how, as a student of life, we should always ever be alert to keep evaluating every action of ours, whether that falls in the purview of dharma or not. And that is how this whole discussion goes. And we can look at when Ram starts the fight and she appears, and how he invites her to fight is also interesting. They reach the dense part of the forest and Vishwamitra says, she lives somewhere here. But because she is an ogress, she may not even appear, or she can appear in different forms. So be alert. Now Ram is expert in Shabdabedi Bhan. That is called, he can hear the sound and shoot. He can destroy his enemies just by perception. He doesn't have to see them physically. With all the abilities, Ram is alert. And what does he do to invite her? They say he strings his bow. That sound of the string, when he leaves there, that bow goes boom. The sound is so loud. It is explained that many trees fall. It appears as if there was an earthquake. The whole earth shakes. The birds fly. It is like a terror going through the forest. Except for Vishwamitra and Lakshman, everything is shaking. And that shakes our ogress, Tataki. And she rushes towards the sound, who has come. And the fight begins. And as expected, she uses all her powers. But Ram being Ram, he always goes through his own style of killing. He still has the sense that, okay, let me see if I can control, From a human eye, you can say that he was trying to see that, can I just subdue her? Is there still a hope that the ogress would convert? She will transform. So he tries to stop her with her bows. She does not. She disappears and fires, throws stones, and so what he does, he cuts her hands off. He cuts her legs off. But ogress has a power. She leaves that body and takes another form and another form. So now if you keep cutting the limbs and she keeps changing her forms, so it is again a chain reaction happening. And Vishwamitra says, hey Ram, she's an ogress. You cannot stop her just by cutting her limbs, because she has an ability to change the forms. She can leave the body and take another one. So you have to go for a kill. Please don't think of her as a lady. And then Ram uses his weapon, a one astra which binds her actually, and then shoots another to her heart and kills her. And Vishwamitra feels happy. And here again, another thing, he gets happy and he says, Ram, on your accomplishment, now I have realized that you are truly divine. I feel so interesting that how a caliber of Vishwamitra, Brahma Rishi, needs this acknowledgement time and again in these 3-4 days. He has 3 times acknowledged Ram's divinity. It is like, we wake up and he says, Swami, now I know you're God. And that tomorrow again something happens and wow, now I can see that is divinity. So each experiences, each miracles give us that awe factor, and we jump and we say, oh, that is God. But unfortunately, we don't understand and realize that all that was always God and all that is not God. Our understanding of God is just like that pebble falling into the ocean, only that ripple which also disappears. So we live in this fantasy world that we have understood our master. He does a miracle and we say, wow, today we saw the God's power. Swami is God. And tomorrow again we forget. And then third, something happens and then again we scream. But if we get established in that thought, if we understand what is God, and if we get established, then nothing would excite, nothing would acknowledge. We'll just live in that bliss. Here is said Vishwamitra. At every instance when Ram shows something extraordinary, when Ram does something special, Vishwamitra jumps and says, now I have seen divinity. So can you imagine? So Tataki's death was another such instance where Vishwamitra is happy to have realized the divinity in them. And then he says, Ram, now I do not need any weapons. Now I don't have right to hold them because these weapons are divya weapons, they are divine and they have rightful places in you. And he hands over these weapons to Ram. So you can imagine, now next episode we look at this whole thing We can even look at few of the weaponaries, what he has given it to Rama, and how he does that. But interesting part is the whole process of, and mind you, they have still not reached their ashram where the main havan is going to happen. So I'll take a question here. Brother Srinivas says, is there any reason as to why Tantra Shakti is generally considered not as positive, perceived as not as positive as the mantra and Yantra Shakti? If that could be the reason for Ram not receiving that. No, no, no. Ram, of course, knew Tantra Shakti also because it's a part of the learning. But what I meant when he says not as considered as positive is because Tantra Shakti tends to give powers faster and in a shorter way. It's a shortcut to powers. So it only adds up to our ego, it adds up to our false sense of ownership and ability of the doer. And what happens is when we are not ready for that status and we receive something, then we don't know how to handle ourselves. If I get power more than I can handle, then the power will get into my head and I am bound to do mistakes. And with Tantra Shakti, you are controlling a subtle aspect of life. So you are controlling spirits, you are controlling the subtle, the Sukshma Sharira, Sukshma world. So you are controlling the second layer of the creation, which is subtler than the gross. And subtle is much more powerful than the gross. That we'll also see in future as we go forward. So imagine you getting into that realm when you have not evolved yourself or matured yourself to that status of being. And then that status starts bothering you. You understand? So because of that, Bhagavan would say, don't engage yourself in Tantra because you are not ready yet. And Tantra it's officiated in a particular very strict template. If the template goes wrong, there is a lot of strictness to follow tantric way of life. So you have to have certain lifestyle, certain food, sleeping patterns. There is lot which gets involved into Tantra Vidya. And if anything goes wrong, the repercussions on the person who is doing it is highly harmful and dangerous. So you can even lose your life, you can get paralyzed, you can get anything. So that is why Tantra Shakti in this point of time of Kali Yuga is not a recommended one. That's all. So there is nothing wrong with Tantra Shakti. It is inability of us to receive it and live to that standards. Okay? So that is the beauty of it. So I think we will look at the next phase of how when they reach Siddhashram, that is the place which Vishwamitra had made long back, and he uses that ashram, and we'll look at that ashram, we'll explore further in our next session. If you have any further question or thoughts, you may please mention it now, or else we'll close it for today. And we pray to Bhagavan to give us strength so that we can continue this beautiful journey and keep bringing you this lovely anecdotes and stories from behind the scene, as they call it. So thank you so much, and I offer my grateful pranams to Bhagavan, and thank you all for joining in today, and pray to see you next week again with another episode of Sai Ram Katha. Thank you. Sai Ram.